Hi, it's a pleasure to have you here. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. My name is Eleanor Hayes, I'm 63 years old, and I live in Tacoma, Washington, in the same white two-story house where my husband and I raised our only son, David. From the outside, everything in my life looks calm and ordinary. Neighbors wave, flowers bloom in my front yard, and the mail always arrives on time. But the truth is, since Richard died, every room in this house has echoed with absence. I keep a pot of coffee on from morning until dusk, though I rarely drink more than a cup. It's more for the comfort of routine than the taste. I've learned to live with silence, to fill my days with crossword puzzles, old movies, and too many memories. I thought the worst chapter of my life had ended 5 years ago, but I was wrong. It was a calm Friday morning, the kind that slips by unnoticed, with soft gray light filtering through the kitchen windows and the kettle hissing low on the stove. I was folding dish towels when I heard the sound of tires on gravel. Megan's car. She didn't knock, just walked in like she always did, balancing a paper bag of groceries in one hand and her oversized purse in the other. "Hey, Eleanor," she said quickly, barely glancing at me, already moving to unload the bag. I noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the way her shoulders tensed with every movement. I offered her coffee, but she declined, said she was running late and needed to get to the clinic. It felt rushed, but nothing seemed truly out of place until later. Megan barely stayed 5 minutes, talking fast about traffic, patient load, and something about scheduling changes next week. Her eyes didn't quite meet mine, and she kept checking her watch like she was waiting for something or someone. I told her to slow down, that the groceries could have waited, but she just smiled tightly and said, "You know I like to help." There was a moment as she reached for her keys, when I thought she might say something else. Her mouth opened slightly, but she closed it and walked away. I followed her to the door, waving as she got in the car and sped off without even buckling her seatbelt. I brushed it off, thinking she must have been overwhelmed. But in my gut something buzzed. As I returned to the kitchen, wiping the counter and humming to myself, I noticed something odd on the table. A black iPhone with a cracked corner and no case. It wasn't mine. I still used my old flip phone, stubbornly resisting the modern world. I picked it up and turned it over, recognizing Megan's lock screen photo. A blurry shot of her son playing in the yard. She must have forgotten it in her rush. I figured she'd be back for it soon, or might call the landline if she noticed it missing. I set it gently near the fruit bowl, careful not to disturb anything, and went back to making tea. But the calm wouldn't last. 10 minutes passed. I had just sat down with my mug when the phone lit up suddenly, buzzing loudly against the wooden table and startling me enough to spill a little tea on my hand. I reached for a napkin, eyes instinctively drawn to the glowing screen. The name flashing there froze me in place, the sound of the vibration pulsing like a second heartbeat in the room. It wasn't a number or a telemarketer. It was a name I hadn't spoken aloud in 5 years, a name etched into a marble headstone and buried deep in my memory. My breath caught. Richard Hayes. My husband. Calling from the dead. I stared at the screen, barely able to process what I was seeing, as if my brain refused to accept the message. The phone rang out once, twice, then stopped, leaving a deafening silence in its place. My heart was pounding so hard it made my hands tremble, and for a moment I thought I might be imagining the whole thing like a cruel trick of the mind. I reached out to touch the screen just to confirm it was real, and there it was, his name bold and clear. I whispered it without meaning to, feeling like I had broken some unspoken rule. Richard Hayes. The man I had buried. The man I had mourned. My husband had died 5 years ago in a car accident outside Missoula, Montana, during a snowy business trip that went horribly wrong. The police said the vehicle had lost control on a curve, crashed through a guardrail, and burst into flames in a ravine. 3 people were declared dead at the scene, including Richard. We'd flown out to identify what we could: his suitcase, his watch, and a dental confirmation. I had held David as he cried beside me, promising him that at least we had answers, even if they were painful. But now here I was holding a phone that said my dead husband had just tried to call. I sat perfectly still, every muscle in my body locked in place, afraid that moving would make the moment shatter like glass. My mind couldn't find logic, only fear and disbelief swirling in waves too fast to control. I didn't answer the call. I couldn't. My finger hovered above the screen, but something inside me screamed to wait, to breathe. Was it a sick joke? A scam? Or was it something deeper? Something unspoken? I placed the phone back down as gently as if it might explode and waited, eyes fixed on it, waiting for it to light up again. Seconds later, just as my pulse began to slow, the screen blinked once more. Not with another call, but a message. I leaned in, heart thudding, and read the words beneath Richard's name. Did he see the photo? Call me when you can. My hands began to sweat. The tone was casual, almost routine, as if this kind of contact had happened many times before. The he in the message made my stomach twist. Who was he? And why would Richard be asking Megan, my daughter-in-law, such a question? Nothing made sense anymore, but one thing was clear. This wasn't an accident. I stood up, pacing the kitchen, trying to assemble the fragments of logic like pieces of a shattered mirror. Richard was dead. I had buried him. I had cried myself to sleep for months. And yet, there was his name, his contact, his message, all on Megan's phone. My thoughts turned sharp and fast. Was this a cruel prank? A man using his name? Or was it something darker? The message felt too personal, too precise to be random. And the phone, Megan's phone. Why was she receiving messages from my dead husband? My knees nearly buckled as I gripped the counter, desperate for answers that refused to come. Richard's death had been ruled an accident, the kind no one walks away from. I remembered the call that shattered our world, how David collapsed to the floor when he heard, how I stood frozen, unable to believe. The authorities said the crash had been instantaneous, the fire too intense to leave much behind. His co-workers' families had similar fates, the same closed caskets, the same hollow funerals. They told us it was better we didn't see the remains, that it would only haunt us. So we accepted what they gave us: charred belongings, cold paperwork, and a death certificate that left no room for doubt. Or so we thought. Even then, something had never sat right with me. A quiet itch at the back of my mind I could never silence. Why no open casket? Why the need for dental records if the others were supposedly identifiable? I had asked questions, but they always answered with practiced sympathy and deflection. I told myself to let it go, to stop torturing myself with what-ifs, because grief already had its claws deep in me. But now, standing in my kitchen with Megan's phone still lit up, those buried questions surged back with unbearable weight. Had I spent 5 years grieving a man who never really died? I remembered the funeral vividly. The heavy rain, the umbrellas snapping in the wind, the way David clutched my arm like a child again. The casket had been closed, sealed shut with polished brass, and no one questioned it because we were too shattered to demand more. I remembered the detective's voice, low and firm, saying it was for the best. That image became my final memory of Richard. A name on a stone and a wooden box I never saw inside. I told myself closure didn't always come with answers. But maybe, just maybe, there had never been a body inside that box at all. I walked back to the table like it might vanish if I looked away. My hands were trembling so badly I had to sit down before I dropped the phone. My finger hovered above the screen, the weight of every possible truth pressing down on me. I hesitated, not because I wasn't ready to know, but because part of me already did. I opened the message thread, expecting a few lines, maybe something vague. But what I saw wasn't just a message. It was a conversation. And it didn't look recent. It looked old. I started scrolling slowly at first, then faster as panic twisted tighter in my chest. The thread went on and on, weeks, months, years. All from a contact saved simply as R. Dozens of messages full of back and forth replies, Shared moments, plans, updates. I wasn't reading just one lie. I was stepping into a long secret life. Megan had been talking to someone using Richard's name for years. And it wasn't just casual conversation. There were emojis, affectionate phrases, inside jokes. This wasn't business. This was personal. The way they wrote to each other made my skin crawl. Short messages filled with warmth, nicknames, soft words that didn't belong between a daughter-in-law and her dead father-in-law. He called her M. She called him R. They joked about David's habits, shared pictures of meals, even mentioned holidays. One message said, "You looked beautiful last night. I can't stop thinking about you." My stomach dropped. This wasn't just contact. This was an affair. One that had started while I was mourning, while David was building a life. I scrolled further, each message another blow to everything I thought was true. Then came the images. First, I didn't want to look. But I had to. The first few were blurry, low-light shots of a man's hand, a table setting, a jacket slung over a chair. But then I saw him. A man with a short beard, older, leaner, wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap. But it was him. Richard. My husband. His eyes were the same, his smile a little smaller, but I knew that face better than my own. He had aged, but he wasn't dead. He had lived all this time. And Megan had been with him. One photo stopped me cold. Richard was standing in front of a marina, the water behind him sparkling under an overcast sky. In the background, a sign read Portland Yacht Club, Oregon. He was in Oregon. My husband hadn't vanished into thin air. He had moved 2 states away and built a new life like we were all disposable. The photo had a timestamp just 3 weeks ago. While I was baking pies for David's birthday, Richard had been smiling in the sun, very much alive. I felt sick. I wanted to believe there was some other explanation, that maybe it was a look-alike or some elaborate scam. But the more I stared at his face, the less I could lie to myself. That was him. I knew the way his eyes curved when he smiled, the small scar on his chin from when he fell off a ladder in '92. My hands started to shake again, not just from shock but from something deeper. Betrayal. This wasn't just a man who faked his death. This was a man who had abandoned his wife, his son, and taken up with his own daughter-in-law. What shattered me the most wasn't the photos or the messages. It was the timestamp on the last message. It had been sent at 6:42 a.m. that very morning, just a few hours before Megan stood in my kitchen unloading groceries and avoiding eye contact. The message said, "Hope today goes smoothly. Don't forget the envelope." It was casual, like they had a routine, like this double life had rules and rhythms. That morning, while I smiled and thanked her for bringing eggs and milk, she had been texting the man I buried. My husband. I suddenly felt the house closing in around me, like even the air had turned false. My instincts were pulling in 2 directions, one screaming for confrontation, the other whispering to wait, to make sure, to not destroy my son's life without proof. I felt dizzy with the weight of it all. I knew David deserved to know, but how do you tell your son that his wife might be having an affair with his dead father? I stared at the phone again, considering my next move. I needed someone to help me carry the weight, someone who had just as much to lose. So I picked up my old flip phone and dialed David's number. My hands shook as it rang. "Mom," he answered on the 3rd ring, sounding distracted. "Are you okay? You sound shaken." I hadn't realized I'd been breathing so hard. I tried to steady my voice, but it cracked anyway. "David, I need to talk to you," I said, clutching the edge of the table. "It's about Megan. And your father." There was a pause, a long one, then the sound of a chair scraping. "What do you mean?" he asked carefully, like he was afraid of the answer. So I told him. Or at least I began to. "I think your father is alive," I whispered, the words tasting like rust in my mouth. There was another silence, this one longer. Then came a soft, disbelieving laugh. "Mom, what are you talking about?" he asked. with that uncertain tone that meant he didn't want to hurt me, but was already trying to rationalize whatever I was saying. I pushed forward faster now. Megan left her phone here. He called. I saw his name. I saw the messages. The pictures. David, it's him. My son didn't speak. Not right away. That's impossible, David finally said, his voice hardening with fear and confusion. He died. We buried him. You saw the reports. I could hear the strain in every word, the way he was clinging to logic to avoid falling into chaos. I didn't blame him. I'd done the same just minutes before. I thought so too, I said, tears now gathering in my eyes. But it's him. I know his face. I know his voice. And Megan's been talking to him for years. The silence that followed was more terrifying than anything else. It was the sound of his world starting to fracture. I told him everything as clearly as I could. About the call, the message, the photos, and the years of messages tucked away in Megan's phone. I didn't embellish, didn't soften anything. I knew he deserved the truth, no matter how cruel. I described the Marina photo, the nickname messages, the timestamps. His voice changed slowly as I spoke, from shock to disbelief to something raw and breaking. Are you sure? He asked once, like a final lifeline. I'm sure, I said, and it broke me to say it. It's him, David. It's your father. And Megan has known all along. David didn't speak again for a long time. I could hear him breathing unsteady, like he was trying not to cry or scream. Finally, he whispered, Don't do anything yet. Don't call her. Don't say a word. I'll be there in an hour. Then the line went dead. I stared at the phone, my reflection warped in its black screen. The air in the house felt cold, even though the heater had kicked on. I couldn't move, couldn't eat, couldn't even cry. All I could do was wait for my son to come home and face the truth neither of us had been ready for. The house felt unfamiliar, like someone had stripped it of its history and left behind only shadows. I sat at the kitchen table staring at Megan's phone, afraid to look at it again, afraid to put it down. The silence was unbearable. Every creak in the walls made me jump. I kept replaying Richard's voice in my head. Even though I hadn't heard it, I imagined what he would have said, how he would have justified the unforgivable. I wanted to cry, but the shock had dried me out. I just waited, holding my tea in both hands, as if it could anchor me to something real. When David arrived, I saw the storm already brewing in his eyes. He didn't knock, didn't speak as he stepped into the kitchen and saw the phone sitting there like a loaded weapon. His face was pale, but his jaw was tight, a mixture of grief and rage building beneath the surface. He didn't sit. He didn't even take off his coat. Let me see it, he said, voice flat but trembling. I handed him the phone wordlessly, and he unlocked it with a swipe like he already knew what he'd find. He scrolled, and with each message, the color drained from his face. David didn't ask questions. He didn't scream or accuse. He read, one page after another, his hands shaking more with every scroll. When he reached the Marina photo, he stopped. His eyes closed. He took a long, unsteady breath, then whispered, We need proof. More than this. She'll deny it. He put the phone down carefully, like it burned to touch. Tonight, he said, finally looking at me. I'll tell her I'm working late. I'll go through her phone while she sleeps. If she's hiding more, I'll find it. I nodded slowly, afraid to speak, afraid to make it more real. That night, David barely touched his dinner. He sat across from Megan, nodding absently as she talked about her day, pretending nothing had changed, though everything had. I knew the plan. We had agreed he'd wait until she fell asleep, then check her phone for more evidence. But behind his eyes, I could already see the devastation growing, like a man watching his home catch fire and knowing he couldn't save it. When she finally went to bed, he waited in silence for nearly an hour before creeping into the bathroom, her phone in hand. He scrolled in the dark, his heart pounding, fingers moving fast, scanning for any final doubt he could still hold on to. But what he found ended all of it. The messages on her phone weren't copies of what I'd seen, they were worse. There were voice notes from Richard, laughing softly, sometimes whispering her name. There were videos of hotel rooms, of shared dinners, of his face speaking directly into the lens. David sat on the edge of the tub, unable to move, barely breathing as he played clip after clip, all dated, all marked with time and place. There were gifts ordered through shared accounts, receipts for plane tickets, bookings under fake names. This wasn't a temporary mistake. It was a parallel life. And Megan had lived it without a flicker of remorse. David checked the earliest message he could find. It was dated just 6 months after the funeral. 6 months. That meant Richard had faked his death and reached out to Megan almost immediately, while David was still grieving, while I was still barely functioning. The realization hit like a hammer. This had gone on for over 4 years. Every family holiday, every birthday, every silent night spent mourning, Megan had been sneaking messages, planning visits, holding on to a secret that would shatter everything. And Richard, my husband, David's father, had watched it all from the shadows. Alive, selfish, cruel. David came to my house the next morning, his face gray with sleeplessness. He didn't need to say anything. I saw it in his eyes. "She's been talking to him all this time," he said quietly, like admitting it aloud would make it more bearable. I nodded, unable to speak, still stunned by the magnitude of what they'd done. "It wasn't just messages," he continued, barely above a whisper. "They were involved. Intimately. For years." He rubbed his hands over his face like trying to wipe it all away. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a life behind my back. When David showed me the photo, I almost dropped it. There they were, Megan and Richard, standing close together in what looked like a cabin porch, their bodies touching, his hand on her lower back like it belonged there. She was smiling in a way I'd never seen before, like someone finally relaxed, finally free. And Richard, he didn't look guilty. He looked satisfied. It was the kind of photo lovers take when they're pretending the rest of the world doesn't exist. But it did exist. We existed. And they had erased us to write their own twisted chapter in secret. I covered my mouth, gasping, the air knocked from my lungs. I had spent 5 years mourning a man who wasn't dead. And now I had to accept that he had chosen another life. Worse, he had chosen it with someone we had trusted like family. My heart didn't just break. It folded in on itself, collapsing under the weight of betrayal too deep to name. I looked at David, who was barely holding himself together, and I didn't know whether to hold him or fall apart with him. Everything we knew, everything we believed, had just been rewritten into a nightmare. David was calm, too calm, and that scared me. He said he needed to confront Megan, but not without proof that would hold up under her denial. He copied everything from her phone, saved files, screenshots, videos, photos, even metadata. "She's going to lie," he said coldly. "I need her to know I know everything." I begged him to wait, to breathe, to not let rage take over. But he was past reasoning. "She made me raise his child, Mom," he said through clenched teeth. "She let me love that boy like he was mine." I froze. I hadn't realized it until that moment. That night, David pretended everything was normal again. He told Megan he had to stay late for paperwork at the clinic and left early, only to circle back and park down the street. From my window, I watched the lights in their house glow, unaware of what was coming. David waited in the dark, watching, thinking, planning the words he'd say. He didn't want to explode. He wanted truth, confession, something to explain why his life had been torn apart without a warning. He was building a trap with facts, and when she stepped into it, there'd be no room left for lies. The hours crawled. I stayed up in my armchair, the phone beside me, praying this was all some twisted misunderstanding. But I knew better. I watched the clock tick past 10, then 11. Every creak of the house felt louder than usual. Every gust of wind outside felt like a whisper I couldn't quite hear. I wanted to call David, but I didn't want to interrupt whatever was unfolding. So I waited, still and aching, gripping the arms of the chair like they could hold me together. And then just before midnight, the phone rang, and everything changed. When my phone rang just before midnight, I nearly dropped it. My hands were stiff from waiting, my nerves stretched too thin. It was David. I answered on the first ring, bracing myself for the sound of his voice. "Mom," he said, and I knew instantly he'd found more. His voice trembled, not with panic, but with something colder, deeper. "It's him," he said. "It's really him. Alive. Hiding. Lying." For a long second I couldn't breathe, because hearing it confirmed aloud made the nightmare real beyond denial. David said Megan confessed. She had no choice. He showed her everything, cornered her with the photos, the audio, the flights, the dates. At first, she denied it, tried to blame an impersonator. But David saw her panic unravel with every new file he revealed. When he played the video of Richard smiling into the camera, she collapsed. "It's true," she whispered. "He's alive." No excuses, no elaborate defense. Just the truth laid bare in one breath that broke my son's world. David said she cried, begged him not to hate her, but it was too late. Megan had been hiding everything in a private email account under a false name, full of travel confirmations, digital photos, hotel bookings, and bank statements that traced back to Portland. She even had scanned copies of a fake driver's license Richard was using, new name, new birth date, a completely rewritten identity. There were videos of him playing with a little boy, her son, my grandson. In one clip, Richard lifted him up in the air and said, "That's my strong boy," and the child giggled like he knew exactly who the man was. I felt my stomach twist. I wasn't just betrayed, I had been erased. I broke down in the kitchen, my whole body shaking, because the truth wasn't just that Richard had lived. It was that he had chosen to live without us. He didn't run because he had to. He ran because he wanted to. And he didn't just disappear. He started over with the one person who should have been loyal to us. Megan hadn't just kept his secret. She had built a life with him, shared a bed with him, raised a child that wasn't David's. Every holiday memory, every photo in their hallway was a lie. I had been mourning a ghost while they were building a future. "There's more," David said, and his voice was different now, quieter, like something in him had died. I braced myself, not sure I could handle another truth. "They have a child together," he said, barely breathing. "And it's supposed to be mine." For a moment I didn't understand. I thought he meant he had adopted Megan's son as a stepfather, that maybe Richard had fathered the child before she met David. But no, the boy was born during their marriage. David had believed he was the father. And now everything made sense in the most horrifying way. I whispered, "What do you mean?" But deep down I already knew. David paused, then said the words that made my blood go cold. "He's not mine, Mom. I did a DNA test last year." I gasped, unable to form words. I didn't tell anyone. I thought maybe the lab made a mistake. But when I asked Megan, she freaked out. Said I was paranoid. Destroyed the results. He went silent. But now I know why. She wasn't protecting me. She was protecting him. The boy wasn't just his stepson. He was his half-brother. I sat there shaking, my mind spinning in all directions, unable to find a single thread of normal to hold on to. How do you process something like that? A woman you welcomed into your family, raising a child with your husband while married to your son, and that child, innocent, sweet, oblivious, was now at the center of a betrayal so deep it felt biblical. David's voice was flat now, numb. I knew something was off. He doesn't look like me. He never did. And I realized neither of us had really looked. Not close enough. We saw what we wanted to see. David confessed that the night the test came back, he couldn't sleep. He stared at his son, his not son, wondering what else was a lie. Megan had cried, screamed, blamed stress, said the lab must have swapped samples. She swore the baby was his, begged him to trust her. And he did, because love makes us blind to the obvious. But now, with everything exposed, the truth stood unshakable. Megan and Richard had deceived him for nearly 5 years. "She let me raise his child," David said. "She let me believe I was his father while sneaking away to see mine." The DNA test had been done in secret. David hadn't told anyone, not even me. He said part of him had felt ashamed, like doubting his own child made him a bad father. But the uncertainty ate away at him. When the results came back negative, he thought he'd gone mad. He told himself it wasn't possible, that errors happen. He let it go, buried it, trying to be a good man, a loyal husband. But the doubt never left him. Now looking back, he saw it all: the timing of trips, the weird distance, the way Megan never let him take the boy to the doctor alone. She'd been hiding everything. When David confronted Megan that night with the truth, she broke down fast. No more lies, no more spin. Just panic and guilt and desperate excuses. "He needed me," she kept saying. "I didn't know how to stop." But David wasn't interested in apologies. He showed her the DNA results, the messages, the photos. "You let me believe he was mine," he said, shaking. "You let me love him like a father." Megan tried to reach for him, but he stepped back. "You were sleeping with my father while building a family with me," he said. "You didn't just lie. You destroyed us." Now everything made sense. The tension in their marriage, Megan's late nights, the way she flinched whenever Richard's name came up in old conversations. David said it hit him like a puzzle snapping into place. All the strange moments he had ignored. The child's uncanny smile, the secretive texts Megan claimed were from work, the sudden weekend trips to conferences she never mentioned again. He remembered the boy calling Richard Uncle R once, but Megan had laughed it off like nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was a carefully constructed illusion. A family built on lies, on blood that ran in 2 directions. After Megan's confession, David left without another word. He got in his car, drove aimlessly through the night, and finally ended up at my house just past 3 in the morning. I opened the door to find him standing there, hollow-eyed, his face streaked with tears, unable to speak. We sat in silence for what felt like hours, not because there was nothing to say, but because nothing felt adequate. No language could contain the damage, no word could undo the betrayal. Eventually, he just said, "It hurts everywhere." And I held him the way I hadn't since he was 10. The weight of the betrayal settled in like a permanent ache. Megan had shattered David's trust, stolen years from his life, and let him raise a child who wasn't his while she secretly clung to Richard. And Richard, the man who once taught David how to ride a bike, who cheered at his graduation, who cried when he got married, that man had chosen to lie, to vanish, and then return as a stranger in his own son's life. There's no word for that level of treachery. It was incestuous in spirit, if not by blood. It was unforgivable. And still the pain didn't stop. David's grief quickly turned to rage. A deep, shaking kind that couldn't be calmed. I tried to talk him down, to urge patience, but the betrayal had cracked something primal inside him. "I need to see her," he said. "I need to hear her say it again. I need to see if she feels anything at all." I begged him to wait, to let the police handle it, but he wouldn't listen. "I won't hurt her," he said. "But I need to look her in the eyes when I ask how she could do this." He left in the dark, his shoulders tight, his fists clenched. David stormed into their house without knocking, catching Megan in the kitchen, her eyes swollen from crying. He slammed her phone on the counter, the screen still open to one of the videos. "Where is he, Megan?" he demanded, his voice loud but not wild. "Where's my father?" She backed away, startled, stammering, unsure of what he already knew. "You lied to me," he continued. "You let me build a life on a lie. You let me name a child that wasn't mine. You loved him while you pretended to love me." His voice cracked. "Tell me where he is." Megan broke. She dropped to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. her whole body shaking with the weight of her guilt. "He needed me, David," she cried. "He said he had no one else. He told me you wouldn't understand." She clutched at her chest like the truth physically hurt her, but David didn't move. "You don't know what it was like," she gasped. "He called me from a payphone, begging me not to tell anyone. I didn't plan it. I just couldn't walk away. But it didn't matter anymore." Her reasons were ashes, and David's heart was already gone. Between sobs, Megan laid everything bare. Richard hadn't died. He had faked his death after embezzling money from a joint venture gone wrong, fearing prison. He'd planned to disappear forever, but when he saw Megan at the funeral grieving alone, something broke. He called her months later and she answered. First it was just phone calls, then photos, then meetings, then the affair. Megan claimed she kept it secret out of fear, out of shame, out of love. "He said he couldn't come back," she whispered. "He said the life he had was over, but they built a new one in shadows." Megan tried to defend herself, painting their relationship as some kind of tragic love story. "He was broken," she said. "He didn't ask for any of this. He just needed someone." David shook his head slowly, disgust turning to disbelief. "And you thought that made it okay?" he asked. "You thought your pain gave you permission to burn everything we built?" She cried harder, saying she never meant to hurt anyone. But the words sounded empty, practiced. "We didn't plan to fall in love," she added. "It just happened. But love built on deceit is just another word for betrayal." David's rage surged again as he said the words that would end whatever was left between them. "And you had a child with him?" he asked. "With my own father?" Megan looked down, her silence answering for her. "You let me name him. You let me hold him in that hospital room like he was mine," he whispered, his voice cracking again. "You let me love him like he was my blood." She tried to speak, but no sound came. And for David, that silence was louder than anything she could have said. It was confirmation, final and cruel. Megan sobbed on the floor, clinging to David's leg, pleading, saying she had made a mistake, that she was lost, that he had started to change before any of it happened. "You were never home," she cried. "You were always tired, distant. I didn't know what to do." But David just looked at her, like he was seeing a stranger for the first time. "So you chose him?" he asked. "You chose my father over your husband? Over your son?" She nodded through the tears, unable to justify the unjustifiable. And David walked out without another word. David left the house shaking with fury, his breath fogging in the cold night air, fists clenched so tight his knuckles turned white. Megan called after him, screaming his name like it could somehow undo years of betrayal, but he never looked back. He got in his car, slammed the door, and peeled away from the driveway like he was trying to outrun everything. He didn't cry, not yet. His anger was too raw, too volcanic. Inside, Megan collapsed again, sobbing into her hands, her perfect world disintegrating around her. But David didn't care. Whatever love he'd once had for her was gone, replaced by something darker, harder, irreversible. The next morning, David walked into the Tacoma Police Department with a folder full of evidence and a voice that no longer trembled. He handed over Megan's phone, the printed messages, the videos, and most importantly, Richard's false identity documents. The officer who took his statement blinked in disbelief more than once, but the proof was undeniable. Richard Hayes, declared legally dead, was alive and living under a fake name in Oregon. David didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. He wanted justice, not revenge. And for the first time in days, he felt like he could breathe again. This wasn't about rage anymore. It was about truth. Within a week, investigators confirmed what we already knew. Richard had survived the crash and staged everything. Altered records, burned documents, paid someone to help fake the evidence. Insurance fraud, identity theft, and years of evasion had kept him off the grid. But now, thanks to David's testimony and the files Meghan had unknowingly preserved, authorities traced him to a quiet suburban neighborhood just outside Portland. He had a modest home, a business registered under a new name, and perhaps most damning of all, a school registration listing him as the emergency contact for Meghan's child. The lie had been hiding in plain sight. Richard was arrested without incident, taken into custody while walking out of a grocery store, groceries still in his arms. His expression, captured on a dashcam, was eerily calm. No surprise, no protest, just resignation. The charges were severe: insurance fraud, falsifying death, obstruction, and financial crimes linked to his supposed business trip. The moment the story hit the news, our quiet town exploded with rumors and disbelief. I didn't leave the house for days. Every headline carried his name next to the word fugitive. And yet I still couldn't decide if I wanted to see him again or forget him forever. Meghan was called in for questioning soon after. She cooperated, but her role in hiding a fugitive and raising his child under false pretenses led to a temporary custody suspension. The boy was placed with David's sister pending further investigation, and I watched from afar as Meghan stood on her porch, watching her son be driven away. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just folded in on herself, like the guilt had finally silenced her completely. David refused to speak to her, blocked her number, and removed her name from every legal document. Whatever part of his heart she once held, it was now dust. David began therapy a few weeks later, but healing was slow. Some days he sat in my living room for hours silent, staring at nothing. Other days he'd rage. Against Richard, against Meghan, against the unfairness of it all. He couldn't look at photos of the boy without breaking down, and yet he still asked about him every few days, whispering, "Is he okay?" As if he hated himself for still caring. I tried to be strong, but seeing my son so broken was its own kind of grief. Richard hadn't just vanished, he detonated our lives and walked away from the flames. Months later, I stood in the courtroom during Richard's sentencing, staring at the man I had once loved more than life itself. He looked older, tired. His once proud posture wilted under the weight of his choices. When the judge read the verdict, Richard looked at me. His lips moved, barely a whisper. "I thought I was saving you." I didn't reply. I didn't cry. I turned my back and walked out, because some ghosts don't deserve forgiveness. They deserve to be buried twice. And for the first time in 5 years, I felt the weight of him finally lift from my chest.